I was going to play my thing. I forgot to play my thing.
Feeling so small, watch the clock ticking off the wall, but tonight I'm letting it go. Spend my coin for sure. I'm gonna be myself, or I could be someone else. No one's stopping me now. I'm gonna skip my breaks, I'm gonna make mistakes. I just wanna feel alive. It's just what I do when I'm out, so try not to hold me down. Feel alive when I'm in this town. Look at those beautiful stars. I wanna drive a faster car. Nothing can break me, no, no, nothing can break me. Try not to hold me down. Feel alive when I'm in this town. Look at the beautiful stars. I wanna take a trip to Mars. Nothing can break me, no, no, nothing can break me. Look at the beautiful stars. I wanna drive a faster car.
All right.
Sounds like some proper bopping music.
I love that song. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I love that song though, and I actually had made a different one where I had some of the testimonials going across the screen, but I forgot to upload it. So that's what you guys got today. Maybe you guys will see the other one on Monday. Yeah, so welcome everybody. I think I'm just going to change my green screen because otherwise I am going to lose my mind looking at myself. Okay.
I think the ghost look was quite a good one. You can sort of like disappear.
Yeah. Woo-hoo. I'm gonna lose my mind looking at myself. This is so close to the green that it's just you can see through me. But I'm really excited because today we're going to be talking about customizing lessons. So for when teachers start, a lot of times they will start teaching online and they start with a company and you have like, I call them the cookie cutter lessons, right? Like, so you have the lessons where you go into your Palefish lesson, you go in your VIP kid lesson, and like everything's there, and they even tell you at the bottom, you don't even have to think, right? You just go in there and there's teacher guidance down there and it says, put the student on the screen and ask them what's your favorite color. It's like, oh, okay. Like you don't even have to think about it, right? So basically every single kid going into these lessons with these new teachers are getting essentially the same experience. But one of the things that Katie and I have both noticed, and a lot of other experienced teachers have noticed, is that not all kids are the same, right? You can't teach every kid the exact same way. I've had students before taking these lessons where the same exact lesson. So say like level 3, unit 2, lesson 1 for student A, they needed two classes to get through it, really, realistically. And the other one could have skipped it completely because, they already knew it, or they just learned it so quick, or they learned it in the preview because these companies will give the previews too. So it's just really important to customize lessons. But one of the problems that you have is figuring out how do you even customize a lesson, because that's a lot of work, right? Like say you have 60 students, I'm supposed to take the time to lesson plan and customize 60 different lessons. That's what Katie and I are here to talk about today, is how to do this without spending twice your working hours to do this.
Awesome. I'm really excited to share a bit more about like strategies for doing that, because I think for a lot of teachers when they're first starting out teaching privately is that you get really overwhelmed with either planning your own lessons or finding pre-made lessons, and then you find the pre-made lessons are perfect for your specific students, and because you want to adapt and be a great teacher and adjust it according to what they need, and then how do you tweak and adjust things, and then you've got the parent telling you, oh no, we want this curriculum, that curriculum. I know we've had that conversation before about not listening to parents with that kind of nonsense, but it can be very challenging, I think, for new private teachers to kind of feel confident customizing your learning plan and customizing how you teach, particularly when you've come from a company. Because I think a lot of us, if you just talk with a company previously, that had those cookie cutter lessons with the scripted, like everything, telling you exactly what to say, you almost struggle yourself just to feel confident in being fully independent in your teaching style as well, because you find yourself second guessing, am I doing this correctly? Am I saying the right thing? Am I meant to be doing something else? I'm not meant to be doing anything specifically because I'm my own boss, but is this the best for the kid? It's very challenging.
I'm just going to drop that.
Yeah.
I'm not ignoring you. I'm just going to drop this in the chat because I think that all those people that said that they wanted to come, I don't think they realized that it was over on YouTube. That's the one problem with the Facebook events.
Oh yeah, like
people don't
they're
understand
on
where
Facebook
it
and
is.
tag everyone or something. I know it's
No, I've
saying,
got that whole chat group of people that are waiting for this. So
that was really organized.
I'm gonna come over here and wait. Am I in the right lesson? Okay, am I in the right lesson? Yeah. So that's something that a lot of that comes with experience and time and getting to know it. And I think that it's just okay. This is how I explain it to a parent. So I'll tell you two things that I did. Kate, I'm not telling Katie. Katie already knows. We already talked about this.
We've had this conversation already, but yeah.
I think you know what I'm talking about. But like, I actually made a video on my Xiaohong show, and I was a little nervous making this video because it was a little like, yeah, like, how if you've ever like done any marketing classes, they say like, you're actively trying to attract the people that you want and repel the people that you don't want. And I did this very efficiently by making a video saying, I will not teach you the curriculum that you come to me because I'm the professional. I said it nicer than this, but essentially my words were, I'm the professional. My job is to evaluate your kid and come up with a learning plan. Anybody can teach your kid out of a workbook. That's not me. That's not my job. I'm not going to teach. It doesn't work. Okay. Like, use those workbooks at home, use them with another teacher, but you're not coming and using them with me. It was nicer than that. It worked really well. And I got a lot of students from it because it showcased my professionalism and my expectations. And now I don't have to, like, when I have parents come to me and say like, oh, I really want you to teach reach higher. I'll be like, here, watch this video real quick. And I just send them the video. And then they're like, oh, okay, how many lessons can I book? It works really good. But, but the other thing with that is, with these lessons, I had a student come to me that I had taught previously at another company, and she found me on RedNote. I did not contact her. It just randomly showed up on her newsfeed one day, and she wanted to take a trial lesson. After she took the trial lesson, she was the mom, not the kid. The mom was like, oh my goodness, this is a completely different experience. Like, what is going on? It's night and day between the company and you. I'm like, well, because when you're at the company, your options are very limited. So if you're taking a class at Palefish, Linguist, VIP Kid, they have very strict rules on what you can and can't do in class, on what you can and can't share. Palefish back in the day even had the, your welcoming intro should be approximately 1 minute, 1 to 2 minutes. And like that, the pacing and everything and the structure. You can't some companies you can't screen share. You can't bring in outside material or upload material. There's no co-browser outside of the classroom. So it's very, very limited. But the material...
And those companies want that. I think that's the other thing that teachers, if you're used to working with a company, the reason the companies do that because they want their teachers to be replaceable. Like, they know full well that you're probably not going to teach with them for more than a few months or a few years at the very most before you realize their pay is terrible. You're going to go elsewhere. So they want to be able to replace you at a moment's notice with a different teacher, and the students still have a seamless class experience because everyone's reading the same script.
Yeah.
So they want their lessons to be standardized. And to a certain extent, you can understand for the company's point of view why that's good, but I don't think it's good for the kids, and it's certainly not good for you as a teacher.
It's a money grab. Yeah. It's a money grab. That's all it is. And I explained this to the parent. I didn't say it's a money grab, right? Like, I'm not going to like trash talk a company to a parent, but I explained this to the parent and I said, when you're working with a company, they're putting out curriculum that is, it's meant to be used for mass enrolling, the mass selling and mass hiring of teachers. They want to be able to bring in a lot of teachers and a lot of students and just put them together. It's not meant for customized lessons and like really like getting to know the kid and everything. And I'll tell you, some of these companies are really good at making it sound like it is in their sales calls. I had my daughter take a trial lesson with a Chinese teacher from one of these companies, and they call and call and call and call my phone. They're like, oh, we just got off the phone with your Chinese teacher, with Claire's Chinese teacher, and she said, and I'm just thinking like, girl, she
No,
did
she
not tell
didn't.
you a thing. She didn't even give her feedback yet. Like they just make up these things about the students too. It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, the longer you're in the industry, the more things that you see, and you're just like, this is not good for the students. But yes, so today we're going to talk about customizing lessons. So you're not getting paid $10 an hour at another company to teach random ABC slides. And yeah, did
I'm
you want
making
me to?
slides actually. Shall I share? I think I'm sharing them. Actually. I think you need to put them on
I
screen.
just said, I was just going to say, you want me to share
Okay,
that? Okay.
perfect. So I feel like this was kind of. I have a tendency to ramble, as everyone knows. I think. So I thought it might be helpful to keep on track somewhat. So obviously we've got our title. We can skip that. Oh, I was going to
We
do a
like
sales
the
pitch.
rambling too. So anybody is more than welcome to leave comments to distract her. That's always fun.
Yes,
So leave some
absolutely.
random comments in there.
I want to start off by a little introduction about Abridge Academy because I feel like I skipped that in my intro. Anyway, hi, I'm Katie. I'm the director of Abridge Academy. Abridge Academy sells teaching materials for online teachers. They're super interactive, they're super engaging. And you might be thinking, hang on, Katie, you're not just giving a presentation about customized lessons. Why are you selling pre-made lessons that are not customized? I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go through in today's sort of session, because I think something that a big misconception a lot of Abridge Academy members have is that it's meant to be a step-by-step follow the script sort of stuff like you might have had with those companies before. And actually, I've had quite a few questions. People saying, is it okay if I do this? Or am I allowed to teach the lesson over 2 lessons instead of 1? And I'm thinking, you're your own boss. You're allowed to do whatever you want.
Wait, you really get those questions?
I genuinely have had people ask me that. And if you're one of those people that ask me, it wasn't a stupid question. I'm not judging you. But I genuinely do have people asking me, am I
Oh,
allowed to teach the lesson over multiple classes, or am I
well,
allowed to
no.
skip this part, my student already knows it, or am I allowed to do this, that, and the other? And I'm thinking you can do literally whatever you want in your own classes because you are your own boss.
Yeah, it's not anything that is like bad, but it does put a spotlight on one of the problems that online teachers have, and that's the you could be with these companies for years and you go independent and you're still clueless as to how to be a teacher in a lot of ways because you haven't ever learned that. You've been taught the, just like when everybody left these Chinese companies and they're like, hi, my name's Jill, I'm from America, waves American flag, right? Like I've been there, right? But they teach us these ways that are just easily replicable that all teachers can do, but they're like so bad.
Exactly, yeah. So one of the things that all of us going independent kind of struggled with was finding teaching materials that are adaptable and are adjustable. We'll talk more about that. But yeah, just a quick promo for Abridge Academy. I know, Jillian, you've got your referral link in the description somewhere, so people check that out. But if you're looking for interactive pre-made lessons, including step-by-step ESL curriculum, which can be adapted, don't worry, you don't have to follow the script, and a whole bunch of specialist lessons, which is what we're talking a bit more about specifically today, then yeah, check it out. There's a free tier. It includes the placement test, trial classes, loads of free lessons, parents onboarding kind of materials and stuff to get your parents started. And of course, the paid version has like over 500 lessons included. Lesson slides, homework workbooks, flashcards, lesson previews, games, feedback, all of that, all in one thing. So it means you can, if you want to, deliver exactly the same kind of experience as parents might have had with one of those companies in terms of giving them that really structured, sort of everything included experience. And the great thing is, because you are your own boss, you can also adapt that and present it in a way that looks still very professional, gives them that very like step-by-step feeling like they're making progress experience, but without it having to be the cookie cutter boring stuff that they had with a company where they spent 10 lessons learning how to say yes I do, no I don't, I like bananas, or whatever nonsense they make them repeat 50 times. So do check out the Abridge Academy lessons if you're looking for something that is going to help you save a lot of time with lesson prep. And we're going to talk a lot more about how you can actually customize these as we go through with examples, so I'm not going to talk too much. I feel like we talked about this a bit already, Gillian, but I wanted to highlight 3 big problems with generic curriculum. We're not trying to criticize companies here. I think companies do have some advantages for students. They have, a very structured, easy to follow kind of way. There's lots of advantages for them taking classes with a company. But one of the big problems that for students and for you as a teacher with this sort of generic curriculum kind of approach is that it can be boring. And kids being bored is not going to lead to kids staying with you very long. So that's going to affect your student retention statistics. You're going to have high student turnover, people leaving, and then you have to keep advertising, finding new students if they just feel like your lessons are just boring on repeat, reading out textbook. And also a big challenge, we mentioned this one already, was that it's not adapted to your students' goals or their needs. It's, just very generic. So half the stuff they already covered because they know it already. Half the stuff's irrelevant to them because they didn't want to focus on grammar, and there's a whole bunch of grammar stuff you're making them do. And then maybe there's 10% of it that's actually useful for them, which means they're making a tenth of the progress per lesson they could do if you'd customize things. That was a bit of an exaggerated example, but you get the point. Like, it slows down their progress if you haven't customized things around their specific needs and the specific goals that they're working towards.
I want to interject here really quick. She said we're not saying anything about not saying anything bad about the companies. The companies have their advantages. I will say that when you're working for the company, if you want to get more bookings, do this. You don't have to be independent to do this. Why do you think I'm fully booked? Because I go in there and read off a script? You think that if I go on to Lingo Ace right now, my entire screen is gray asking for students to open classes, but I have private students, so I can't. But the entire screen is just like fully booked, like months in advance if I wanted to. And it's not because I'm going in there and, looking pretty and smiling nice. And, it's because I'm doing this. So even if you're working with a company, do this.
And also, I think a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about is actually what you just might call general good teaching strategies. And you would have learned about it when you did your teacher training, but then once you start teaching with those companies, some of them try and encourage you just to read off the script and forget all of that training. So actually, a lot of what we talk about is not just about independent teaching. It's very relevant whether you're teaching with companies, whether you're teaching in a school, whether you're teaching yourself privately or on a marketplace or whatever. But if you are teaching privately or on a marketplace, by adapting to your students' needs and becoming a better teacher, giving them a better experience, it's going to help you stand out a lot more. Whereas if you say, I teach what's the one you mentioned earlier, Reach High or whatever, no criticism on them, I'm sure they're great, but, I teach the whatever curriculum, sign up for my classes. Well, the parents are going to look at you and think, well, this teacher teaches that, this curriculum, so does this teacher, so does this teacher. In fact, so do these 100 other teachers. Oh, and these 10 companies also use that curriculum as well. Which one's cheapest? And they're going to go there, okay, well, I can pay $10 an hour for this teacher, or that teacher wants to charge $50, but they're doing the same thing. So I'm going to go for the $10 an hour one because they're the same.
Well, that's kind of a different subject though, as far,
yeah.
I guess it does kind of relate to the whole customized lessons things, but that goes into
marketing as well.
That goes into the messaging that you're putting out on your social medias and the way that you're presenting yourself. You need to present yourself as the bridge that is going to help them go from problem to solution.
Mm-hmm.
Because anybody can buy a car, but you're only going to take one bridge, right? You could buy any car, you could use any car to get across the bridge, but there's only one bridge, and you need to. Am I talking too metaphorically? You guys get what I'm saying? Like, you are the solution, not the curriculum. And when you can prove that, you can express that in your messaging, then that's where you'll have a lot more success.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. I think sometimes people get so hung up on, I'm teaching this curriculum, that it becomes such a big part of their messaging and how they communicate and how they promote themselves. So not only does it mean that they're teaching very generic lessons, but they're also presenting themselves as a very generic teacher. So they're just small tweaks, and you can still use pre-made lessons, but small tweaks to how you promote yourself, how you organize your classes, and how you structure your lessons and how you adapt them means that you can become a lot more specialist and able to provide a better class experience for them.
And your clients, your potential clients, these parents that are out there, they don't know the difference. All they know is what they've been told. They don't know, they're not teachers, okay? So they don't know the difference between someone teaching Abridge Academy and somebody teaching Reach Higher, except for what they've heard. They don't know the difference between, they don't know the difference between a good teacher and a bad teacher unless they can just base it off of, unless you're either showing it or they can base it off the curriculum that they've heard is good.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times that the curriculum that they've heard is good is not good for an online class.
Or it's just not good for their student. They'll mention something that's a reading focused curriculum and they want speaking lessons. And I'm thinking, well, why are you asking for a reading curriculum if you want your kid to speak? I mean, yes, you can read out the text and talk around the text. But if you want to learn to speak specifically, well, surely it'd be better to have lessons that are more focused on authentic, producing your own speaking, not just reading out things.
Don't you have debate lessons in Abridge for that?
We do, exactly. Good example. Thank you. And actually, a lot of my students are focusing on that kind of wider, more advanced speaking skills, and the debating lessons are fantastic for that sort of development. And they do ask me sometimes, some of these parents, when they first reach out to me, they say, I want to learn this curriculum or that curriculum, or my kid's doing this textbook in school. Can you teach this textbook? And I'm like, what did your kid want to achieve? This is not going to help.
I will never bring a textbook in my classroom. Like you couldn't pay me enough. That is the most, if it's boring for me, it's boring for the student. I'm not going to sit there. Anybody can sit there and read off answers. It's not teaching them how to think in English. And I want you guys to really pay attention to the things that we're talking about, because these are the things that you're going to like put in your messaging too, to make you a higher paid teacher, right? So like you start talking about thinking in English, start talking about, the curriculum not being the best thing. And the best thing is like getting the students to do X, Y, Z, that's when parents ask you, can you teach this workbook? You got to have the right answer for that, or you're going to lose that student.
And talking about fancy messaging, I put some ideas on the screen of what is personalized learning. I tried to Google like what do we mean by personalized learning, and after sifting through a whole bunch of definitions, these are the kind of key phrases and things that come up a lot, and I think are really important to bear in mind. But I also feel like a lot of this is kind of overwhelmingly complicated sounding talk. So when you try and Google what is personalized learning, it's going to tell you it's adapted around their students' level, the challenges they face, the goals they have, their interests, their learning style, all of this kind of thing, which basically means know your student and adapt how you teach according to what they want to achieve and what they're working on, and how they learn best. And then custom learning goals and milestones. Like you ask them, why are you learning English? What do you want to? And sometimes they have a really clear, very specific goal, like a particular exam they want to take, for example. But that sets a very clear learning goal with clear pre-made learning objectives, really like things you have to achieve. But even if it's not something so specific, understanding where they want to get to and then breaking that down into milestones, like step by step to get them there, helps you track progress, demonstrate progress, and personalize how you teach around what they want to actually achieve. And then more student-led learning, things like projects, activities, things like that. And then continue adapting how you teach within each class itself, we call this formative assessment. I don't know how familiar you guys, do you use this term in the US, Julian?
Yes.
Formative assessment. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Also known as assessment for learning, depending on, I don't know, where you did your training. But essentially the concept is you continually pay attention to how well the kid is understanding something. You're continually assessing them. It doesn't mean formal tests, but you're continually doing little quick quizzes and asking them questions. And then depending on whether they answer the question correctly, you adapt what you do next. It sounds really obvious because it is, okay? This is just called good teaching. But those scripted lessons that companies and things push on you, where they say, ask this question, repeat this pre-made sentence, tell them to make the sentence again, but with a different word in it. And there's no way to adapt that because the company's saying you have to read off the script. If they didn't get the first question, well, you've got to plow on through it. That's not how you want to be teaching when you're personalizing your teaching, right? So they didn't get the first question, you need to go back and reteach something so now they do get that question. And that's essentially all we mean by formative assessment. Assessing, understanding, adapting how you teach, giving them the opportunity to implement the feedback from where they went wrong or whatever, and that helps them make progress. I feel like I'm rambling a lot, but
I always hated those two terms in school because it sounds like something else.
But when it sounds way more complicated than it is.
Well, yeah, formative it sounds like it should be formal. But basically what it is it's the student is forming their knowledge at the time, and then summative is the end goal. It's the sum of it. So formative is like they're forming it. So as you're forming it, as they're forming their knowledge base, you are assessing them. So they're going through and they're saying they're learning this grammar skill, and you as a teacher, you're realizing like, okay, we're struggling a little hard here, so we're going to pull back on this section a little bit because they don't need it as much and put more effort here. That's where formative is. You're forming that skill.
Exactly. I think the term that, like when I did my teacher training, my university preferred the term assessment for learning instead of formative assessment, which is the idea you're assessing someone for their future learning to allow you to adapt how you teach them so they learn better next. So you sometimes hear that term as well, assessment for learning. And then a summative assessment would be assessment of learning, which is what they've already learned. But it's terminology. We don't need to worry about the details.
It's all added up together and it's the sum. So equals to, that's the end of the unit. That's the summative. I hate those
Exactly.
terms. I struggle with them for like the whole time. Like I'd be like, which one is which? Because it
I can
sounds,
just remember, it just brings back memories of essays, you know, endless writing all these essays and reading all that nonsense research. Not that I have mixed opinions, I have to admit, on some educational research and the value of it versus what's completely made up. But there was a lot of writing essays and reading what half the time I was like, there's no scientific data backing up this nonsense. Someone's just made up this theory. Anyway, probably shouldn't moan too much about my teacher training. It was great. I learned a lot from it, but certainly too many essays. Yeah. So the next thing I wanted to kind of mention, and I don't know what your process is for this, Gillian, but what I put down is kind of how I like to think of the process of adapting a learning plan for students. So let's say you've got a new student, right? They've reached out to you and they want classes. You don't know anything about them yet. They've just sent you a message saying, hey, do you teach blah, blah, blah? And you're thinking, yes, I'd like to teach you. This is the kind of process that I recommend going through in terms of personalizing how you teach them. So if they reach out and say, can you teach me this specific curriculum? Okay, and they're immediately trying to jump through to the planning stage, right, of a particular plan of what curriculum they want you to teach. But you've skipped the first two bits about asking them more details and assessing their learning and their understanding and that kind of thing. And that's not going to result in a nice personalized learning plan, which is one of the big problems of people demanding specific curriculum. So I always start at the beginning with asking them about their students' goals or what they actually want to achieve, and then some kind of assessment. I know we've talked about this as well before. I think did we do a live previously on this? I've certainly done some lives on this, talking about Age Academy assessment lessons. We'll talk more about that as we go through. But basically assessing your student, what do they already know? What are they struggling on? So what do you need to focus on in your classes? And then you use that to put together a plan, right? Because you know their goal, because you asked them that, and you know what they're struggling with. So therefore you can put together a plan as to how you overcome that thing they're struggling with to get that goal as quickly as possible. That's your learning plan. And then you just continue to review and fine-tune, adapt your plan as you go. Don't just think, okay, I made the set plan, we follow it for the next year.
This kind of goes in a circle though, and maybe not directly back to one. Well, yeah, sure. It kind of goes in a circle though, because you go back, you're always assessing, like you're adapting, assessing how the adaptation went, replanning, which makes it sound way more complicated than it is, because this can all be done in a couple of seconds.
Yes.
Once you get used to it,
Exactly. Yeah. And by adapting, we just basically mean redoing steps 2 and 3 continually. Like, keep assessing how they do.
Yeah. So this could be, this sounds, when you're talking about customizing lessons and everything, and you look at this sounds like, oh, wow, I'm going to have to like be planning for my students all the time. But really, planning for me is, and I think, well, okay, I won't use that example. Well, sure, we'll talk about that student. Is it okay if I talk about her? I think you're going to talk about her in a second.
That bit.
So I have a student who is 5 years old, and I teach her every single day. And she's like completely fluent as a student. And it's really hard to teach her because she's 5 years old. She can't use the curriculum on the screen because she's on a computer with a mouse, and she just doesn't have that dexterity that a 5-year-old had. She can't do the things, right? She can't click things on screen. She can't write yet in English or Chinese. She just turned 5, but she can talk fluently. She can talk just like my own kid could at 5 years old. She can read better than most American kids at 5. But she can't write, and she can't do a lot of stuff like that. So, and I'm a writing teacher, by the way, so that's fun. So a lot of the things that we do, I can't plan. I can't go into class and be like, okay, well, we're going to do this, because I don't know how well her attention is going to hold. And it's got to be something that she's going to be interested in, because I see her every day, and it's more of a conversation kind of class. So there will be times where, Dad's like, she likes ghosts, if you want to do something with ghosts. And I was like, yeah, sure. I couldn't find anything that was 5-year-old appropriate with ghosts or scary stories. So I was like, I'm like doing the warm-up lesson with her. I'm over on Twinkle, just, still trying to find something, right? I'm over on Twinkle trying to find something. And I was like, Book Creator, we go. She just wants to talk. We're going to talk. We go to Book Creator. We write a really, 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 really scary story for a 5-year-old. But we adapted it. The dad came to me afterwards and he said, I am so impressed with this, because you're teaching her writing skills. The next class that we did with Katie's curriculum, I actually had her get out a pen and paper, and she learned how to write mommy. She learned how to write diaper and poop because she's 5, right? So like she learned how to write silly things because mommy gets a heart and daddy gets poop. I'm like, poor dad. Right. But like I was able to figure that out on the fly, because I can assess quickly, like during the lesson, and make the plan in my head and do it. We go into Katie's curriculum, and I was like, okay, Sue doesn't want to do writing today. The next class, she didn't want to continue working on her book. Okay, well, let's figure something out. I know Katie's got curriculum. Let's go take a look at that. I'd never seen her writing curriculum before, aside from what she had showed me. So I go into it and picked a lesson that I apparently was supposed to have a reading thing attached to it too, right? I just like ran into this lesson, go into this lesson, adapted it to her because it was a B1 level, B2.
I'm trying to remember. I think you did the one you did
I did
was
the very
about B1 or so at least, yeah.
I did the very last one in the very last level.
Yeah.
So the highest level one I picked first is what she picked. And there were some storytelling parts to this lesson that were not meant for a 5-year-old. So I skipped those parts. We talked about characters. We talked about plots. We didn't talk about climax and all that or whatever else was in it. We just, we adapted the lesson to meet her goals. Dad was really happy. It was very, 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 very informal lesson where the kids just learning how to communicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's one of those. It doesn't have. It can happen this quick, and the longer you do it, the quicker you can do it. This is not like I'm spending forever planning something.
I think the key thing really is to, and I'm going to move to the next slide, so I think this shows it more clearly, is to make sure you've got an upfront idea of what exactly the student wants to achieve. Because you can adjust on the fly because you know the student wants to develop very specific skills and that's what they're focusing on. You know you can skip certain bits because it's not relevant to them, for example. But if you haven't asked the student what their goals are and you haven't assessed them, then you wouldn't be able to do that. So I always recommend that when you first get a new student, and I know we've talked about this in other lives and things previously, but things to ask them when they're first reaching out. This is before you even done a trial class or anything. Or maybe it's in the trial class itself, depending on how you tend to structure things. But I tend to message beforehand, before we've even arranged stuff, just to make sure they're a suitable student for me. Because if they're going to say their goal is to pass the IELTS exam, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I'm not the teacher for you, So I always start out by asking them, what are their goals? Why are they learning English? What do they want to achieve? Sometimes I have a very specific goal with a deadline associated it. I need to know what that deadline is because that's going to help me plan. And if they've got a specific reason for using English, I teach a lot of international school students or kids who are moving to English medium schools. So they for them, academic English, for example, is very important. Whereas if you're teaching students who are really young and they just want to sort of play and be able to watch movies and things in English, then they might have a very different kind of focus. And I also ask them things about their learning style. How have they been learning so far? And what have they struggled with that? The reason they're reaching out to you is because what they're currently doing is not working. So you need to understand what's wrong with their current learning approach, and therefore how can you either supplement that, maybe it's just they're lacking something, or what can you do instead that's going to be different, that's going to really help them make progress. Or if whatever they've been learning previously has fallen through for other reasons, not because it was rubbish, but I don't know, the teacher quit or something, get an idea of what did work for them, to understand how they learn. So they might be saying, for example, they'll be using some kind of AI app, and the trouble with it is that they're not getting enough conversational speaking practice because it's getting just repeat the same sentences. I don't know, depending what app they've been using. So that therefore that's what they want to focus on is the more extended discussion and role plays and that sort of thing. But it gives you an idea of their learning style and what they're working towards. And then do your trial class. I don't know, we call it assessment class, a trial class, whatever you want to call it, but you do some kind of test, some kind of way of identifying what their current level is and what they're struggling with and what they're good at. A little bit more promo for Abridge Academy. We have these free placement test trial class slides, which is like a very interactive quiz that you can do with your students. It's free and allows you to place your students at the correct level. It tells you their Abridge Academy level, it tells you their CFR level, it tells you what Cambridge exams they might want to work towards. And a whole bunch of other free stuff that's all included. But essentially what I want to learn from this trial class from a student is what level they're at, what are they good at, and what they're struggling with. And not only does it give you like the final score at the end, they've got a specific number which you align with a specific level, but also because you've done the trial class with them and the placement tests and things with them, you can tell they did particularly well on the grammar questions, but they struggled with the speaking maybe. or the other way around. They were terrible at grammar, but everything else was fantastic. So it means you can then adapt your learning plan according to that. And when I write feedback, and there's custom feedback and learning plan included with these trial class slides, again for free with Age Academy. And what I write on that feedback, there's a whole section specifically about what they need to work on. And I pick out specifics from the assessment, saying they struggle with past tense irregular verbs, or they struggled with extending their sentences to add more detail in. Because then I can link that to the learning plan and say that's why we're going to do more on storytelling, so they can make more extended descriptive sentences, perhaps, or whatever. Sorry, I talked a lot, but
no, it's okay.
I thought I just quickly flick through this bit because I thought it's a useful kind of key thing to get across about before you even start teaching the kid. Make sure you've got this information up front. That's a kind of big formal assessment out of the way, and then from then on, it's just continually assessing how they go. You know.
I've actually got one. I've actually got one that I use. I was looking for it. I've got one that I use on your thing, right? Like, if you want me to show it, I can show you one of the assessments, like how it looks like when you're. Yeah, I just pulled it up. Hold on. Here, I'll show it really quick.
I'd love to see how other people use this. I know like how I make them. I can show you loads of examples of my own students.
Yeah, have you ever seen I can't talk. Have you ever seen how somebody else did it?
I don't think I have. No, actually,
okay. Well,
I've only ever seen my own. So
this is how I do it. So let me see. Nice. Let me go back into where's Wave? What tab am I on? Hide from stream. Oh, that's interesting. Why is it not? Hold on. Share window. No, Chrome tab. Why wasn't it? Okay, now it says that I'm sharing it twice.
I think you need to click on it at the bottom in Wave video. You need to click on
I did. It's not putting it. Hold on a second. I might have to scroll because we got so much stuff up here. Let me try this again. Chrome tab, student assessments, share. Let me see if it's okay. That's why. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is one of the assessments that I did. So this is Cynthia. Her native language is Chinese. So these are, some of her goals. And then just go through and where's my screen here? I'm trying to find the right one so I can move. Okay.
I want to point out, by the way, the template's pre-made for you, so you don't have to worry about.
This is all in Canva. Okay, so I put in her placement test result, what level she was on, and then you click the stars. You just color in the stars, like you're like a little kid on the computer, but you're coloring in stars, right? What I actually do is I just drag it, highlight it, and then click the color and color them all, and then uncolor a couple of them that she needed to work on. I tend to give a lot of stars though, so I might be a little bit more. I don't know. I give lots of stars for things. And then I put in her key strengths, areas for improvements, and then put in the feedback here. This is really nice because this has the curriculum that they're using. Katie's actually comes with a lesson or a parent guidebook. And there's one in English and one in Chinese that you can send them that really walks you through exactly what the curriculum is and how it's going to help. And each one of these has, like, if you use Katie's, which I'm going to be honest, I don't use your feedback anymore. I did a couple times, Katie, but those stars are too much for me. I use my own. But if you do use Katie's, it's really nice because it says, like, straight up, like, these are the words you're going to use. And like, this is, every level has its own feedback thing. And then what I do on the bottom is I just put my contact information and I put a picture of myself. I don't think you had a picture of yours on there. I don't think that was a thing that you had, right?
Yeah, no, I had a picture.
Okay. I couldn't remember if you did or not. But yeah, I just put a picture of myself and then put my, this is an older one, so it doesn't look quite like this anymore. I've changed things. I don't put TESOL certified or anything like that in there. And it's a one-page thing, but yeah, that's what I do. And it's really nice because you're able to, you look really professional doing this. Not all teachers are doing this. So whether you use Katie's or, somebody else's or your own, it's a really good idea to have something like that. Do I do anything different on it than you do, or no?
No, actually, you've followed pretty much a very similar approach, which is great to see. I think Is I put more detail in the sales pitch at the bottom about myself, because I'm like, sign up for my classes, buy now. I do a whole little sales pitch thing at the end. But no, that's kind of similar, which is kind of interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, I leave the sales pitch. I leave the sales pitch to the messages. So what I do is I
Yeah.
take that big blurb, and that blurb that I put in there was not one like it's not one that I would normally use. Actually, it wasn't one of the better written ones. So I probably pulled up a bad one for you to look at. But I take that written blurb and then I copy it. So if it's a Chinese student, I send them the PDF and then I copy that whole blurb and I send them the blurb in there as well, just in case they're not opening up the blurb or opening up the PDF. They're still seeing what I said. They can still translate it without having to scan the image. And that is, it just goes into selling right after that. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. And one thing I think might be worth talking a bit more about is that on that feedback bit, there's a section called the learning plan. And actually, I've got more slides. Sorry. I've got some slides with some examples of what to include on that learning plan, which is like once you've done that assessment, you then put together what the student's going to do next. And if you noticed on Gillian's one, I was going to point this out, you mentioned that Able Academy level 4, I think it was, but you also mentioned you're going to do some reading lessons, and I think there's something else as well. You had a couple of things listed. And the point is, you don't just say, you're going to do Able Academy level 4. We're going to work step by step through every single lesson, just like you did when you had classes with VIP Kid. It's adapted and combines together a combination of maybe some core curriculum lessons with that kind of structured, bit of grammar, a bit of vocab, kind of comprehensive English learning. But alongside that, other things that relate to that specific student's goals and what they're working towards.
Oh, I did say that. I said we're going to be using Abridge Academy to support a structured plan to acquire new words and fluency. Reading will be done through the RAS program. Creative writing lessons will help support critical thinking and advanced language development, as well as improvement in her weak areas. So this is a very poorly written compared to what my other ones are, but it was a good example because it does show exactly how I do things.
Yeah. And the great thing is now Abridge Academy's got story lessons, so you can also include those. But yes.
Yeah, that's funny.
And that's something I think, for example, I've had students who want to focus more on academic English. They want to focus more on specific grammar topics. They want to focus more on English for a specific purpose, like because they're moving to an English medium school or they're moving abroad, or they just want to be able to read their favorite stories in English, right? So you pick out specific lessons, specialist classes on those topics to supplement and complement what you might be doing in your sort of standard step-by-step curriculum. Because then they're still getting that steady progress, but they'll also be able to actually apply what they're learning to like specific contexts that are relevant to them. I've lost my slides. Where do they go? I had a few more examples that show this a bit more clearly, but here, by the way, some pictures, this way, pictures of example lessons, for example, that are in all of the Age Academy lessons, and just examples of some of the kind of specialist things you might want to pick out, like science-themed lessons or debating lessons, travel-related lessons, story lessons, all that kind of stuff.
And there's so much stuff in there that I've only seen one of those.
There's so much, I think, people don't see.
I've seen Little Red Riding Hood. I knew the debate existed, but the other ones I have not seen.
Oh, well, you can get some sneak peeks then, because case study A, this is one of my students I've got, who she is 9 years old and she is level B1. So initial assessment, she said, parents said she's moving to an international school, so she needs to develop sort of academic English, that side of things. Her English is pretty good, like already. I think this is when we first started, like a year or so ago. Her English was pretty good, B1 level, but once you start moving to an English medium school, you need to be able to use English in a more formal academic context. And she particularly struggled with the more advanced grammar, subject-specific English, academic English, that side of things. So this was the kind of learning plan that we put together. She was going to have 3 classes per week, 2 lots of Age Academy level 5, and 1 which was going to be a debating or science lesson, mix and match things up. And then during the holidays, because it was coming up towards a school break, we were going to have some more sort of focus lessons, take a break from the structured lessons and do a fun science project. So again, practicing English for science. Here are some pictures of example lessons, for example. We looked at sort of scientific vocabulary, talking about forces and motion and things in physics. This was a debating lesson. Ignore the student's name. I was trying to hide names by calling it case study A. I put it on the screen. Oops. Anyways, trying to be anonymous. Hopefully my students don't complain about me using them as case studies. But this was a debate lesson where we practiced sort of more conversational stuff that might come up in a school context. like be able to respond to things like, thank you for your question, that's a good point, but blah blah blah, like those sort of sentence prompts. We looked again another debate lesson where we used practice making counter arguments, although blah blah blah, actually blah blah blah, and that's really helpful because she was struggling with the more advanced grammar and the extended sentences. And when it comes to writing in school, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I can certainly remember way too many of those really boring English lessons where we spent ages writing essays, like argumentative essays. Some people think that blah blah blah. On the other hand, blah blah blah. But actually, this is something that students really need to learn. So we had a lot of focus on that in the debating lessons. Here's a picture
That's
of
really
my science
funny.
project.
That's really funny. You say, I didn't tell you this, but I
Oh, yeah.
had we have the challenge, the Enroll and Grow challenge starting on Monday, right? And
Mm-hmm.
one of the people in one of the teachers in Teacher Boss Society, she had a trial like yesterday, and the challenge isn't starting until Monday. So I said, okay, why don't you here, let me show you. I'm going to give you my templates. I'm going to give you I'll give you my templates. I'll give you my feedback. I'll give you like the stuff that you need to get through before that so that you can do well in this trial. And then I said, you know what? Here's a screenshot of how I have a conversation with a student, like what I say to follow up. Cut all the students' information off except for the PDF that said name.pdf. And she says, I think we have the same student. I said, girl, there's no way. There's no way we have the same student. Guess what?
Your student dumped you.
It's the same person. We have the same student. What are the chances of that happening? Like, there's a million.
You say that. I've had one of my students at the moment who takes 6 classes a week. I think she's the one I've used a case study C. It comes up. We previously took teachers with another teacher using Abridge Academy lessons. That teacher stopped teaching or something. I'm not quite sure the details. They stopped taking classes. So she was looking there for another teacher who was also offering Abridge Academy. I know you shouldn't advertise people who are teaching a specific curriculum, but genuinely she searched on Xiaohongshu for teachers who use the hashtag Abridge Academy. I popped up, and so she sent me a message. And that's how I now got, she's taking classes, 6 or 7 classes a week, depending on the week, it varies a bit. And yeah, she was someone who'd taken classes with another independent teacher using the same curriculum previously.
Yeah, we had, and you're like the owner of it. That's funny.
I know. I was like, oh my goodness, there's other people using my lessons out there.
There was this student is taking lessons with me for creative writing, with this other teacher for public speaking, because she told me, she was like, you're not using Abridge Academy for him, are you? And I was like, no, I'm not. She's like, oh, okay, I want to make sure we're not using the exact same material, because but she's like doing creative writing with me, which we're just doing my book creator lessons that I like to do, and then public speaking with her, which is the Abridge Academy stuff. He's got a drama teacher somewhere else, probably like a math teacher. Mom studies homeschool, which I was really confused on that, because I thought that homeschooling in China was not really a thing, but maybe
I'm pretty sure it's illegal.
Maybe something has changed.
That he's taking like public school with the Chinese curriculum, and then he's privately outside of school learning international curriculum. So that he might be homeschooling himself.
That's what I said. I think that maybe it's just a translation error.
Yeah,
he's not really homeschooled, but yeah. But I mean, like the chances of that happening. Like, I have a trial. Let me show you, and then I just happened to show her a conversation from a student that she knew. Like, I'm like, oh my god,
amazing. Yeah. Should we actually have this example of this student, which is mostly gone through, but she wanted science, a combination of science, debating, and core curriculum lessons. That's what I kind of want to get across here, that you combine together combinations of things. And the great thing is I didn't have to plan a whole bunch of lessons from scratch, right? Because the vast majority of this is stuff that's already there in Abridge Academy curriculum. The science thing on the screen right now is something I made. At some point going to come to Abridge Academy. But most of it is pre-made lessons that already exist, but it's the combination of them in a way that saves you a lot of time, but is then still customized around the student's needs. I had your example here, Gillian. I don't really give more details about your student you said with the writing lessons.
I do realize there's a typo in there. Okay, if anybody has ever met a 5-year-old in their life, so then they went to they tell a story like that. So I'm like typing the story out for her, and like I'll be typing the story out for her, and I'll be like, wait, you can't just go there. we need to have a transition. What happens here? So that's kind of how I worked with her on that. It was just a speaking, and she did a lot of speaking. Changed it a little bit because some of the things that she said were not something that I wanted a 5-year-old to be writing. But yeah, this is the story that a 5-year-old told, based on a picture of a dragon that wanted to eat kids and play basketball. We did go through. So at the beginning of it, there's a we started and I'm confused. I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know which order the pictures go in. How you decide, kid. So it's like, what do you think happens first? What do you think happens first? And then we go through and we're like, okay, we're gonna change the story. And then they have, okay, you get to make up the characteristics of the kids. Like, what are they good at? What are they not good at? And she's like, they're good at basketball and running and swimming and and they're bad. Yeah. They're bad at being eaten by dragons. I'm like, okay.
I think I should point out, by the way, the twisted tail versions of the lessons are designed to follow on from reading the story in the previous lesson. Because they put your own spin on an existing story is the idea.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was just trying to roll with it. She didn't want to do what I had planned, so. And usually I never do that. Usually we do what we have planned. But when you have a 5-year-old that you're teaching every day, if you want a happy class, sometimes you got to roll with it and let them, be in charge for a minute.
Yeah. But I think this is quite a good example of where you've obviously assessed what the student really wants to focus on, which is that sort of creativity and productive language output. And you've made that decision not to do structured step-by-step grammar-focused lessons because that's not what they're looking for. But you're still practicing grammar, writing and sort of creative. I think you actually wrote this, but the kid dictated the story as such. She's still having to use grammar correctly when she's speaking, and presumably you're gently correcting things here and there. But rather than being a formal grammar lesson, she's going to pick it up gently through these kind of creative lessons.
And one of the things too, and I don't know if there was a thing in here. Okay, so here there is actually something in here that I had to do this. The dragon wanted to play basketball, but he was not good at it. So then she jumps to the next part, and I said, let's more. What do you mean he wasn't good? What happened? When he tried to bounce the ball, he hurt his leg. That's how I got more out of there. You kind of just get them to, well, tell me more. Well, how do you know he wasn't good at it? Well, when he tried to bounce the ball, he broke his leg. Oh, and then what happened? We tried to shoot the ball and he hurt his elbow. So what happened? Well, he was in pain, but he was happy because he still liked the game. Okay, so now you told me more about the story instead of just telling me he wanted to play, but he wasn't good at it. So it's really focusing on, to somebody just looking at this might not look like a lot, it's just a kid jabbering a story, but really you get a 5-year-old to any 5-year-old, even an American 5-year-old, to develop a storyline. That's a skill that's going to go with them in their future, as they grow. It's a skill that almost nobody works on developing either at 5.
I feel like in school we probably didn't start creative writing kind of lessons till towards the end of primary school. I mean, they touch on it obviously earlier on, but we're not actually kind of coming up with our own stories and things until often quite later on.
We do a little bit, there'll be a draw a picture and then write a sentence about it kind of a thing, or those little books that they make and stuff. But as far as, this is not 5-year-old work, even for an English speaker. Even
I think also that's one of the benefits of having a private teacher for these kind of classes, because in a school environment where there's 30, 35 kids in a classroom, I don't know how big class sizes are in the US, but anyway, say 35 kids in a classroom, they're not going to be able to dictate their story and sort of say it all. You can't do that kind of oral storytelling because they're not going to get around all the kids in the class. So you have to rely on them being able to write the story, and that then requires very different skills, being able to handwrite stuff, which is why we end up working on it a lot later, perhaps in school. But
I do this in my group lessons too, though. So I don't just do this in private one-on-one classes. I do this in my group lessons too, and it works just as well in group lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it works just as well. Maybe not for a 5-year-old. I don't think I could teach a group of 5-year-olds like this because they would have to be able to write on their own. I can only write one thing at a time. Well, no, actually, that's not true. I do have a book I could actually show you if you wanted to, of 5-year-olds where we wrote a story together, actually. Yeah.
It could be a lot of fun, I think. But yeah, it works well like small groups or one-on-one. But I find when you're teaching like a whole classroom, I was a classroom teacher before, right? I was taught in schools and trying to teach. When in Japan, I was teaching 42 kids in a class, and no way could they have done. I mean, they were a little bit older, admittedly, so they could do it in pairs and that kind of side of things. But if you imagine younger kids with that many kids in the classroom, they wouldn't be
We don't.
able to
Our classes are
do all
not
these
that big
pair
in
lessons.
America.
No, probably not.
No,
Here in the
no.
UK, there are only like 30 kids or so per class generally. But yeah. I have one quick more example of how to customize like an overall learning plan, which I thought might be worth taking a very quick look at. And then you had another student who was 7 years old, around A2 level. And this time the goal was kind of informal KT preparation, so for exam, but we're thinking like a year or two away. And she mostly just wanted to focus on having fun learning English, which is a very broad goal. And I feel like this is quite a good example of when you don't have a specific goal. I think both of us, the ones examples we talked about, are international school kids who are that have a very specific reason for needing English. Whereas this student, she's the one I mentioned earlier who previously take Age Academy lessons with a different teacher, which was kind of crazy to me. But she's a good example of someone who just wanted generic English lessons. When I first messaged her, what does she want? Generic English lessons. But actually, once you kind of narrow down what does that mean for them, and what's their learning style, you can then start to customize still around that. So in this case, she was getting really bored with general ESL lessons in school, and she wanted to give more kind of detailed, more descriptive kind of descriptions for things, rather than just very simple, short, repeated sentences. So we kind of combined together some of the Age Academy core lessons. This is level 4, because she struggled a bit with some of the grammar stuff, particularly past tense, things like comparatives, superlatives, this kind of formal grammar stuff. Lots of role plays and speaking practice, so we had lots of fun. So each grammar bit would be quite short. Each lesson we have maybe 5 minutes of learning a few past tense verbs. Then I skim through the rest of the grammar stuff because we don't want to spend ages doing grammar, and instead we focus on the role plays, which uses that grammar but in a bit more kind of fun context. And then we have like the Age Academy stories, which is a really great way for her to enjoy learning English. She loves storytelling. She loves telling me, making up her own stories, reading stories together, and this is getting her to keep practicing the grammar and the vocabulary and all the kind of boring stuff, but in a way that's so much more fun for her. So yeah, and then we also have something fun each week. Oh, these are the storytelling, like telling your own story, writing your own story, that kind of thing.
That's what I expected to open that lesson up to.
Oh,
I think I chose a lesson that was
yes.
too high.
I think you should have gone for the retell the story version of the lesson rather than the twist the tail version.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
she was. I don't want that. She doesn't like little kid stuff. So something like
Yeah.
this was not. She wants ghosts and scary things. So we went with the
I
dragon.
think if you look at the Sparky's Adventure one, the story you picked, but the retell the story version, and this
Yeah.
basically is where I don't know if you can see this very clearly, but basically it's the text boxes, and this is a summary at the end. But each slide they fill in the text box, they write their own version of the text, and there are question prompts and things prompting them to come up with ideas as to what to write, and then you as a teacher can work on sort of fine tuning the phrasing, and in the case of this student, helping her give more descriptive descriptions. Descriptive descriptions, extended descriptions, you know what I mean? Adding in some adjectives and things like that, that kind of thing. And then at the end, it churns out this kind of output of a sort of storyboard of what you put in. Yeah, and then also this kid, we also have just some fun lessons. Like this was the magic school lesson. We did some fun Christmas theme lessons, just stuff like that because she wanted to have fun learning English, which was the main kind of focus. And I know this sounds like, oh, this is not formal teaching, but it's still that speaking practice that she wanted. And she was getting so bored of generic ESL lessons with companies and things before. Because with a company, you don't get any fun lessons. You just have the same lesson after another.
Yeah. Yeah.
Real
quick, do you guys want to see? I found my group writing class. Do you guys want to see one of the projects for one of my students?
That'd be awesome.
Okay, so let me see if we'll just cover it or okay. So this is one of my group students' books, and you can see in here the students wrote this together, and let's see if you guys can hear it. I had them. Well, let me play it like this.
Once there was a boy who wanted to go to the coolest place in the world. So he got on a helicopter and went.
So I think that there's hold on.
Then he used his.
You can hear like each student I have doing like a different part in it, and I feel like that there's like a part where all the kids were like screaming, but maybe not. Oh, maybe it was in this one. This is another student one. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Ouch! That hurts.
So that's one of those where I do like a group writing project, and I have those are little kids doing that. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to because I mentioned it and I've never showed that before.
That was hilarious. I love that. And I love the idea of having a collaborative writing project, actually. That's awesome. Because I can see that working really well with like a small group class.
I love my writing classes, but I think if you guys have ever heard me talk before about what I actually teach, you probably know that. I don't like teaching, like I will never teach grammar. I hate it.
I quite enjoy grammar teaching, but I enjoy doing it with games and activities and like learning grammar in context, rather than like in school where you have a textbook and you do endless grammar exercises and it's just like repeat the same sentence 10 times.
The natural acquisition is what I like, but I don't like the, okay, let's study for a test. So let's do a grammar lesson. I worked for a company before, a small company, and they wanted me to make my own lessons and stuff. And they're like, okay, make lessons on this grammar. And I'm like, can I not? Like, no, thank you. No, thank you. I am against the whole classification of words. Like students will be like, oh, continuous, present simple, and then they freeze because they're the adult students anyways. They freeze because then they're trying to like just figure out like what box does it fit in, and they don't talk. Like I'm more of like, get out there, mess up, make mistakes, and let's learn. Like
I think that's the key thing as well. Like it's useful to have some structured grammar understanding, particularly when you're a little bit older, perhaps. Or you're preparing for exams. Some exams actually ask you to know these grammatical terms, which I find crazy. But when it actually comes to be able to use English, these formal grammatical terms are not very helpful. No one wanders around and says to their friends, "Oh, you use the present continuous tense instead of the present simple." Like,
yeah, let me go ask my friend what that means. Like,
yeah,
I'll go ask any of my friends that are smart, right? That are not English teachers, and they will be like, I don't remember that. Like, was that a thing? I almost think that was a thing in school. Like, that's going to be their response. Like, did we learn that? Yeah.
I think particularly when you're teaching young kids, there's a lot of focus on natural language acquisition and picking up a lot of that grammar through reading stories and through having conversations and like role play dialogues and things like that, because that's how they're going to pick it up more naturally. Which actually leads quite nicely into what we've got on the slide here, which is within your class, adapt how you teach. Don't just read off the slides. Like if you don't want to have formal grammar exercises, skip the grammar exercises, or adapt them in a different way. Like rather than having it as a boring grammar exercise, make it into a role play. Change it up to a different format. If they need more practice of that, because maybe they do want formal grammar, I don't know, then put in more practice. Adjust how you teach things and skip bits and add extra bits as needed. And the same with like discussion questions and things. You'll find that if you're using Age Academy curriculum or any other curriculum, they'll often include example discussion questions around, say, a text. Let's say you've read the story, maybe there's new Age Academy story lessons, and there's comprehension checking questions afterwards. You don't have to just stick to those questions. You can follow up and extend beyond them, or you can make them simpler, or you can make up your own depending on what's most appropriate for that specific student. That comes back to what I was saying before about formative assessment and sort of adapting to the needs of your students, not just reading off a script.
And you don't have to wait until the end slide either. A lot of times those slides will come up or something like that will come up, and I'll be like, okay, do you understand all the words that are on the screen? Like circle the words that you don't know, because a lot of times they're like reading it and they look like they're understanding it. But once you get to know it and you've taught it a couple of times, you know that there's that one most students don't know. So let's check in on that,
I often like circle a word that if I hear them when they're reading out, say it's a story and they're reading the story, and I can hear they stumble slightly over a word because it's like an unfamiliar new word to them, then I'll circle it and then say, what do you think that word means? Like have a guess from the context, look at the pictures, what do you think this word could mean? What's a different word that could go in that gap? And using that as a way to prompt them to pick up new vocabulary or whatever it is that you're sort of focusing on, without it feeling like let's learn a vocab list sort of context.
I had a student, a Lingo A student that I taught, And the lesson was about Lynn and his buddy, some little girl, I can't remember. They were in a thunderstorm. It's a lot of it's a lot. It's a lot. It hits. Like that's like the don't it's a lot of thunder. It hits the window, but they didn't really like it was a lower level. You already know my opinion on this, right? But it's like a lower level, so like it wasn't clicking with her, right? Like she's very very basic English, pre A1. It's a lot. It hits, and I'm like, okay, let's go here. And what does a lot mean? I don't know. Okay, a lot. Like, what do you want a lot of? I want a lot of, and she's like, candy. Okay, a lot, right? I have a lot of, and we talked like that. Like you figure out what a lot means. It hits. So that's where I get out my buddy and I abuse my little buddy, you know, and he hits me and I hit him. Okay, hit, right? And we talk about, we talk about that. And then she says she likes the storm. Like, what is this called? I don't know. It's thunder and lightning. Thunder and lightning. Okay, she couldn't remember lightning, so I drew a light bulb, right? What's that? Light. Okay, lightning. You know, the slides aren't going to tell you to say any of that. The slides are teaching you to say it's a lot. It hits. Like, you got to figure out how to work with the student in a way that's going to be best for them.
Yeah, and I think actually there's a picture on the screen here. One example of this is also that's Chloe, the student I mentioned earlier, who she kind of wanted that to practice speaking sentences and things like that, and she was struggling a bit with some of the vocabulary here, like mustache, beard. I don't think she knew the word jacket. She knew coat, but not jacket. So like labeling things on the picture, and then showing examples myself. Oh, this is a jacket. What do you do with it? And practicing some of the sentence structures we learned before. Things like that, like adapting things, annotating things on the screen, as you say, acting stuff out. And this is all stuff probably a lot of the teachers in the chat are thinking I do this anyway, and that's the key thing. Hopefully, most teachers are already familiar with a lot of these ways of adapting how you teach, because it's pretty much just good teaching.
I win this one.
Oh, yes?
Yeah, this is one where British English is wrong.
Oh.
It's a moustache.
A what?
A moustache.
You say moustache?
That's what it says. That's what it says in
Moustache.
It's a moustache.
How do you spell moustache?
There's no O in it in American English.
Mustache, like moustache. I guess we say mustache.
That is how you say it.
Yeah, but you don't put the O in the.
Nope.
Oh, you mean I've got to make an American English version of that lesson?
Katie and I are always going at each other, like picking on like American versus British. And she's like, well, goodness. You always say it wrong. Well, this is wrong because it is not a moustache. Well, maybe it is with your accent. A moustache.
Mustache. No, we say mustache.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere they say moustache. I don't know, but I don't anyways.
So now you got to go back and fix the lesson. Sorry.
I have to make another version of that lesson. Thanks for letting me know, though. Useful. Yes. But yeah.
Or like our sleds. What did you call your sleds?
Sledge.
A sledge. Yeah, sledge. We have sledgehammers.
Very confusing. But that's another way in which you adapt your learning, adapt your classes according to the student, because some students are learning American English, some students are learning British English. And actually, I'm kind of the opinion that students should try and be familiar to some extent with both. I don't think you should just learn one English exclusively, because what you're going to do if you speak to someone who speaks a different dialect and then you don't understand half the words, but yeah, it's another way to adapt things. I don't know, I might skim through some of this stuff because I feel like I made way too many slides. I'm mostly chatting about things. Assessing students. I'm not sure what there's to say this other than assess your students as you go. It could be formal assessment, it could be informal kind of assessment. At the end of every lesson I give some kind of feedback on how they're doing. And that's normally relating to specific learning objectives of the lesson. Like Age Academy lessons already have this feedback slide automatically built in. So it's very easy to provide that kind of quite general-ish feedback, but with a personal comment. But then I also do more like not like official assessments, but things like asking them to do, well, I've written here is alternative assessment formats, like asking them to give a presentation on something, or I might put together a quiz, or they're going to do a sort of portfolio, or they're going to put together a little project or something and present that. And that in itself is a form of informal assessment. It doesn't have to feel like a test. But the point is you're continually checking how the student is doing in every lesson and at regular points throughout the curriculum, throughout your kind of learning plan, to track that progress, which is great for showing to the parents they're making progress, but it's great for you in adapting how you continue to teach, because you notice that they're always struggling with specific things. You then adjust your learning plan accordingly to give more practice on those. But yeah. So I wanted to skim through a few slides very quickly, because otherwise we're going to spend ages staring at some boring slides rather than actually talking about interesting stuff. But yeah. Cool. I feel like we talked about a lot today. And half of that was me presenting some random slides. I didn't quite link into what we were talking about. But like, hopefully some of that was useful for people. And it was really interesting hearing your insights, Gillian, in terms of what you do with your students as well, because everyone does different things.
Yeah. I think that it's just really important to figure out each student, even if you're teaching a group lesson, there are different ways that you can differentiate your instruction and make sure that it's really personalized to your students. Yeah. Oh. And it's, at the end of the day, if you are doing this, you're not providing curriculum. You're providing a tailored learning plan that is customized to the end results and the needs that they need, right? And that's what makes all the difference in the world. Is that your last slide?
Yes, don't worry.
Okay.
I've stopped.
I'm gonna take it away then. Yeah, that makes all the difference in the world. If you have, like, everything. And Mrs. K said the key idea is that a tutor should first experience the process, start with basics, build skills, gain confidence, and slowly develop a master plan.
Yeah, I feel like no one's expecting, if you're new to online teaching or you're new to private teaching, no one's expecting you to be like the perfect master of all of these different skills that we've talked about. It's more about learning as you go along.
Okay. I was trying to figure out what she was saying there. Okay, so yeah, so that goes back to like what you and I both say about, like, go ahead and start with a company. It's great to get the skills. Start with basics, build your skills, gaining confidence, develop a master plan. She's talking about the teachers, like, building. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that your master plan is always going to continuously change. And I don't want you to think that, and I leave all my old videos up there so you can laugh at me, because people come into this and they think like, oh, well, Jill gets bookings or Katie gets bookings. Like they just like have something that I don't have. I don't think Katie has those embarrassing videos out there like I do, but I have
I think if you dig back on my YouTube, there's some pretty old ones that are.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
I have left those up there intentionally. I actually had somebody that I knew from when I worked at Palefish. He's in Teacher Boss Society now, and he said, I knew you when you were in Palefish, and I couldn't stand you. You were so cringy. But and now he comes every week for coaching. But it's kind of like that growth. You make growth. You learn things. My very first intro videos, my very first classes were terrible. And a year from now, I'm going to look back at where I am today and be like, wow, I was so bad. Like, because you just keep growing and growing and getting better. And, don't think that, like Katie said, don't think you have to know everything. You're going to get better. And Emma said she made the last bit of our live. You said that a while ago. I think you made a good chunk of it, though. Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for coming on. So if anybody's interested, that the trial assessments, what do you call them? Do you call them assessments? I can't remember.
So in Age Academy, in the free plan, we've got the trial class, the placement test. I think that's what you think of. Placement test, trial class, feedback, and learning plan templates.
That's all in the free plan.
Yep. All in the free plan.
Okay, I love that. Okay, yeah, so you can get that in the free plan. That's awesome. That's so much
The point
fun.
of the
And
free
then
plan is to get your students on board. So everything you need before you've got students, and even when you first got your first few students, it's got all of that stuff to get students onboarded, plus a bunch of lessons to get you started for the first month or so as well.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. And then if anybody's
Thanks for
interested,
having me.
we're doing our enroll and grow challenge on Monday, and then we will be showing you how to, well, when I say we, it's Katie's not in this, it's a me thing. I'm saying we, I'm talking about myself. We're going to be showing you how to get trial students into your classes so that you can actually teach a trial lesson and how to convert it. So if anybody's interested in that, you can leave a comment and I'll get you that. But yeah, thank you so much for showing up today, Katie.
Thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun, and I feel like good chat about things. It's always really interesting hearing what other teachers are doing as well. So I really appreciate all your insights as well.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I actually have one of these I can show.
Yes.
I got one of those. Yeah. It's really good. I personally don't like the super detailed like stars, and I like to keep mine simple, so I don't do the stars. I don't do that. I did use yours. I did happen to have one of yours though, so I use that there. But it's really good. You definitely want to be able to pinpoint what they're good at and what they need improvement at, because that's going to help you make a sale. It's going to help you enroll a new student. If there's no reason for them to improve or continue, then we're not motivated to do it, right?
Yeah.
So
I think seeing that you've customized the learning plan around what they need to work on is so much more powerful than you just saying, like those companies do, here is our generic curriculum, we're going to place you at this level, off you go.
No, they don't. No, they don't. They say,
Okay, they make up a whole bunch of rubbish, but anyway, like, that's what they're going to actually do.
I talked to your English teacher, and she said she was so good, but she just needed she's going to be so good at speaking Chinese. She's going to be fantastic, and we need to get her in. So I'm just thinking, like, lady, you did not talk to my Chinese teacher. I've worked for your company before. You got a great sales team, though. Kudos to you. And then I said,
pretty good with lingo.
yeah, I said Dwayne. And then I was like, Dwayne. And she's like, oh, like, wait. That's like one Chinese word that I know, okay? Like, that was fun. It was fun. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's always great to have you. Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. If you have any questions about this at all, any questions about Katie's curriculum, she's got a Facebook group called Abridge Academy. She's got a YouTube channel called Abridge Academy. She responds to messages. So feel free to reach out and ask her any questions if you have any. And then if you have any questions about like getting trials, I'll help you with that. So we can get this all set up so you guys can start getting your classes the way that you want them, getting your schedules the way that you want them. And yeah, thank you. Bye, guys.